Hi everyone, Dr. Chiam here. So on a daily basis, when I do consults with patients, very often I have to correct some misconceptions about aesthetic treatments, as well as try to educate my patients on what is the best approach for their aesthetic needs. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about fillers and some of the common misconceptions and questions I have to answer pretty much on a daily basis, as well as some limitations of fillers and what fillers can or cannot achieve. The first misconception that a lot of patients have is that they like to mention Botox and fillers in the same breath. Actually, Botox and fillers are actually very different treatments. Botox is basically what we call a neuromodulator. It's actually a muscle relaxant that is injected into the muscles to produce, in our case, an aesthetic effect. So we use Botox basically to treat what we call dynamic lines or dynamic wrinkles of the face. These areas would include things like the crow's feet, the frown lines, as well as the forehead lines. So Botox basically relaxes the muscles to produce the desired aesthetic effect. Botox in itself does not have any volumizing effect and does not really alter the outward appearance of the face. Fillers, on the other hand, these are more like gel-like substances that we inject into the face for a few reasons. We want to volumize certain areas which may have lost volume during the aging process. We want to contour certain parts of the face to produce a better aesthetic effect. So areas that we usually contour will include things like the jawline, the chin, or even the lips. So these some areas that we typically inject fillers into. So fillers have a volumizing effect. Basically, you're adding volume to the area. That's why it's called fillers. And typically, our filler of choice is hyaluronic acid. Basically, this is a naturally occurring carbohydrate that is of a gel-like consistency, and we find that this is currently probably the safest material to inject as a filler. The second common misconception that patients have is that if I inject fillers into my face, it's going to cause me to look very bloated or look very unnatural and frozen. I think this is partially driven by Hollywood. We see a lot of Hollywood stars looking a little bit bloated and unnatural, and a lot of it is attributed to fillers. To be very honest, fillers can make you look bloated, but it really depends on how your practitioner or your doctor approaches fillers. Typically, I would say from my own personal point of view, if a filler is done well, it can be very, very natural, and it does not produce a very bloated look, because typically I don't like my patients to be injected with a lot of filler. A common amount that we use is between 1 syringe to 3 syringes. So this is between 1 to 3 cc's of filler, and typically if these fillers are placed correctly and in a good position, it can look very natural, and it does not produce what we call overfilled syndrome. The third misconception is that we can use fillers to lift the face. Well, in general, if we inject fillers into certain parts of the face to, for example, replace some volume loss, fat loss, or bony loss in the face, we do generally get a little bit of a lifting effect. So this is assuming that we have just injected in the right places at the right volumes. But if you were to want to use fillers to produce a total facelift effect, there are a few limitations. Firstly, of course, you will need a lot of filler, and by a lot of filler, I'm talking about more than 10 syringes of filler, which is probably going to be very expensive and probably produce a lot of swelling and bloatedness in the face. Secondly, injecting large amounts of filler in the face, although it does give that extra support to the skin and give the impression of a facelift, overall in a longer period of time, it can potentially stretch the skin or overstretch the skin, in fact. And after the fillers sort of wear out and go away, you might end up with a condition that's worse than before. So fillers only really address one part of facial aging, which is volume loss. And this was extensively covered in our previous series on facial rejuvenation. In order to really address the full, total aging process of the face, we also have to look at other aspects of the facial aging process, including elasticity, including the skin quality. So to try to use fillers for a facelift, I feel it's not a right concept. Of course, the gold standard for lifting of the face is of course a facelift surgery, but of course there are other options on the market for patients who want a slight lift of the face but are unwilling to go under the knife, and some of these modalities include tightening and lifting procedures such as HIFU or high intensity focused ultrasound or radio frequency, both of which are low downtime procedures, which do give you that subtle lift without having to undergo surgery or invasive or injections, for example. The fourth misconception about fillers is that we can use fillers to treat wrinkles. I think this was probably true in the earlier days of fillers, where we had truly dermal fillers, such as collagen fillers that were injected directly into the skin or intradermally to improve wrinkles. But of course, collagen fillers have gone out of fashion now because of a series of problems, including allergic reactions. So we mostly use hyaluronic acid fillers these days. And most of the time, we don't inject hyaluronic acid fillers directly into the dermis. Most of the time, we either inject the fillers subcutaneously or even much deeper, such as onto the bone, to replenish the volume, such as fat or bone that we may have lost in the aging process. There are of course some circumstances where we do inject hyaluronic acid fillers intradermally or directly into the superficial parts of the skin, and that is for example, in the instance of a skin booster, where we inject hyaluronic acid into the skin to produce a hydration effect or glow for the skin. These do sometimes improve fine lines on the surface of the skin, but because these are non-cross-linked hyaluronic acid fillers that are injected into the skin, they don't generally provide enough support to improve wrinkles significantly. With modern technology, actually the best treatments for wrinkles are probably the energy-based devices, and these energy-based devices include, of course, lasers as well as radio frequency devices, some of which can be delivered in combination with needling. So these treatments these days are better for improvement of wrinkles compared to injections of fillers. So I hope this video addresses the common misconceptions that some of you may have with regards to fillers, and also demonstrates to you that a combination approach to facial aesthetics is definitely more superior than just a single modality. If you have any more questions, do drop in to the clinic and we'll be more than happy to share more with you.